Well, hello, my friends, and welcome back to the Rewilded Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Lydia Joy, and it is good to be back. I took a little reprieve from recording for you. My last episode was December of 2025, the slow rebuild phase episode. Many of you told me felt like I was speaking right to you. And that is because that is the majority of people coming to me and sharing what they're sharing and what they're dealing with and why people work with me. And I wanted to take a pause to really sit with and reflect upon the things that, I had witnessed in the last year, plus, of course, to make sure that I could kind of like orient us all, at least here in the work that I'm trying to do and share with people so that, we could all take a journey together because I want to name something today that I've been witnessing pretty much my entire, time in the wellness space, quite frankly, but it has hit a tipping point. So it's been building for a really long time. And we're living inside a wellness culture that clearly has become incredibly excessive, wildly incoherent, if we're honest, and just fundamentally disconnected from how human bodies actually heal. And it didn't start with like the wellness culture, if you will. It really is broadly cultural, right? Because modern life really trained us to distrust our own bodies long before more of us started to question pharmaceuticals, right? Because more people are coming to me and, you know, they are seeing through the flaws in allopathic medicine, right? So, what happened though is that many more people are, you know, leaning away from that, turning towards like a more what they're calling a holistic approach or wellness. And what happened when many people started doing that, and this goes, on for a really long time, and it's not just the individuals, it's practitioners, you know, it's like the whole entire picture, okay? So what happens is we collectively have been over time turning towards wellness. Really, we're trying to turn back. We're trying to turn the ship around, really. Like it's like the Titanic heading for the iceberg, right? Allopathic medicine, and people saw it ahead of time and they're like, "Oh, I want off this ship," right? But the problem is we like left that, and what people are often doing is with and not totally realizing it, carrying the exact same mindset into a completely different marketplace, if you will. Okay. So we get over to wellness spaces, holistic health spaces, alternative, if you will, from the mainstream, that is. And, it's still the same paradigm. It's still the same conditioning. It's just different language, different products. It's the same paradigm though. Um and we're all here, right? It's like, okay, how many more inputs can we do? How much more shit can we track? How many more interventions do we need? Like, there's just like more pressure to optimize, to fix ourselves, to correct, to try all these new things that we suddenly think we need to correct our health. But really what ends up happening is it's like we're overriding ourselves, quite frankly. And now, because we live in this information age and it's accelerating exponentially, Pluto and Aquarius, you guys, it's like, what is going on? It's insane, right? And most people can't even keep up with it. It's too much for their nervous system. But what is happening is healing has become something people can and do research relentlessly. Okay. And of course, 2020 era like skyrocketed this too, by the way, right? Because we all got duped into some crazy stuff and people did not like it. And all of a sudden, it's like, hold on, I need to look into stuff for myself now, right? And, we watch all these like holistic health and wellness experts and whomever, right? Like doing all this public performance, right, on the internet. And then, of course, the other issue that's happening is like people are trying to master all the shit at once, or at least they think they're supposed to, or, they're just like overwhelmed by all these things that they read about. But the things we're reading about are like very disconnected from the whole. And it's just a total shit show. Okay. I'm just going to be blunt here today, guys. It's like I wrote a post recently about the wellness circus, because it's like we're watching a crazy performance right now. And it really is a result of the paradigm that we are all in, culturally speaking. Okay. And people aren't just I'm going to air quote learning, because I think learning is not just stuffing your brain full of information, like, and regurgitating it back out, right? People are trying to research more and they're trying to learn more, but they're flooding their systems with like too much information they literally cannot assimilate. And then because of it, they're trying to do way too many things simultaneously without any like appropriate order of infrastructure or like hierarchy of like, okay, here's how we need to take this, chunk it down, and like throw out what we don't need and only do what we do need. Like, you know what I mean? There's no sequencing, there's no containment. There's just like a grab and go kind of situation, like kind of like culture. We can grab and go just about anything, right? You know what I mean? And for some people, this is going to look like overperforming, right? They're like stacking supplements and protocols and routines and rules and like, it's all kinds of stuff. They're just like doing all this stuff. And for others, it looks like freezing entirely, like second guessing every sensation, every reaction, every step forward. And some people, there's like a mix. And for the people who are in that freeze, or maybe even not the people who are just in the freeze. It's like, really, honestly, I think this happens to a lot of people that I'm speaking to, is the moment something feels uncomfortable, like from whatever they try, right? Whatever health information they're reading, they're like, okay, I read this week and I'm probably going to try it, right? And it could be good. I mean, I'm not saying it's all bad or anything. You could have read something I wrote about a foundational thing and you go and you try it and you're like, oh, that didn't work for me. I feel bad, right? And the moment something feels uncomfortable, the assumption is that this must be wrong. Okay? This is the assumption that we're all making. Like, I had a bad reaction to that. Okay, I can't do it ever. It's wrong, right? So I'm trying to name like what I'm seeing repeatedly come through my doors. And it's not like there's really no one's like this total lack of like effort, right? Like people are willing to take action and do things. The problem is there's a lot of incoherence in the actions and they don't match the actual state of the body. Right? They're like all these cherry-picked ideas applied to themselves without context, timing, or restraint. Okay? And here's where I want to be very clear. None of us gets to be a victim in this story, okay? None of us, me included. Right. I'm pointing out the paradigm so we can see ourselves within it, but we all have a responsibility here, right? We all play our own part. Clients have a responsibility, practitioners have a responsibility, health Influencers on frickin' Instagram have a responsibility. The wellness industry has a responsibility, especially when so many inexperienced practitioners are trying to heal people inside that same paradigm that made them sick in the first place, right? So we can go back to 2020, and what cracked open then was a massive wave of, well, maybe it was like 2020 through 2021, 2022-ish, because I've been noticing, like, holy crap, the amount of people coming in who, like, fast tracked themselves to understand some stuff. We cracked open some big awareness, which is great. However, the downside of all this, like, sudden seemingly awareness in more people, what followed that was urgency, okay? Because we're still in the same cultural paradigm, right? And there was this sense of urgency, like, almost like trying to play catch up. You know what I mean? People realize there's some deeply wrong things going on, right? And many people suddenly were like, "Oh, okay." And they tried to compensate for, like, decades of what happened in their body as fast as possible, right? Like, you can call it depletion. Really, it's just decades of living in a paradigm that is not really setting your biology up for, repair. And that urgency combined with unlimited information, holy moly, and a consumer driven model created exactly what we're seeing now, which is a burnout, exhaustion, confusion, and even what people will call it stalled healing, if you will. And I covered this in my last episode. I talked about that slow rebuild phase of a lot of people are kind of hanging out in this, you know, uh, phase, right? So, in this episode, what I really want to name is the shadow beneath modern wellness. I'm not trying to tear it down. I just want to expose what's actually blocking real progress. Because if we don't tell the truth about it, if we don't shine the light on it, we won't see it and we'll keep repeating it. So, it really is a broken paradigm for anyone who genuinely wants to live in wellness, right? Like if they want to deeply repair and, understand how to navigate their life with optimal wellness, um, we have to understand this paradigm, okay? And before I even can talk about the over treatment, we have to understand like what we're trying to heal inside of, okay? Because what's happening in the wellness space didn't come out of nowhere, okay? I'm 51 years old. When I was a kid, I went to one doctor. I literally don't remember any other doctor than my main doctor and one dentist. That's it. The same ones my entire childhood. I don't even remember seeing any specialists for any reason. If something was off, my mom handled a lot of stuff at home. We just took care of things, right? The world was very different then. And it was even more different for my mom as a child and for her mom before her, right? So things have changed rapidly. Like if you reflect on how, like a few decades, like holy shit, how much is going on out there in the world around our health, okay? So, and if you go back far enough, health and wellness weren't separate concepts. They were literally embedded into our lives. Care happened inside families, communities, villages. There might have been like some type of community healer, right? Maybe more than one. I don't know. But part of what was like so embedded in any type of communal living systems was, maybe someone understood the plants or the types of medicines that were available to them, or maybe understood the body in a much more intuitive way than other people did. And the thing was, we didn't outsource health to dozens of disconnected specialists. There was containment, there was continuity, there was relationship. And that containment mattered, y'all, so, so very much. And what we have now is the total opposite. We live in a world with thousands of entry points into what we call health and wellness, right? We have infinite modalities, infinite tests, infinite programs, infinite experts. And instead of communal care or coherent guidance, we're all dispersing ourselves in a million different directions. And that dispersion costs us greatly. It costs us mega energy, y'all. It costs your bandwidth. It costs your nervous system capacity. It costs mineral reserves, even. And then, therefore, your voltage, your ability to keep charge in your system instead of discharging it all the time. And then we're expected to manage all of this inside a societal structure that's already burning us out. And so what do people do? They fragment. They see 10 different functional medicine practitioners. They layer somatics on top of trauma therapy. They add breath work and peptides and supplements and protocols and classes and equipment and apps and trackers. They buy things they don't even truly fully understand. They learn maybe just enough to feel responsible and then move on to the next thing. And this is important for me to say clearly because there is never going to be less. There will always be more. There's always going to be a new test that somebody is going to be pimping out hard, probably this month. Another panel you need, another protocol that someone created that's the thing for something, right? Like another root cause we need to go chase, another expert emerging from out of nowhere who's, loud on a platform. You know what I mean? Like I could go on and on. Basically, the point is another thing you haven't tried yet, is what I'm trying to get at. For me personally, at one point it was like 2015, 2016, I almost took a program that taught a whole bunch of functional tests. And the selling point at that time was simple. More information is better. The more data you have, the closer you get to the truth. And let me tell you, we all believed it. And there is some truth to it. I'm not saying it's all wrong. However, because having information isn't wrong. The problem is it's too much and it's never been contextualized within human capacity. And so then what we did was we started bypassing the most basic elements: rhythm, nourishment, rest, containment, safety. And then we tried to build really complex interventions on top of body systems that were already depleted and expected to spin all these plates in this world that we live in, right? And then people started pathologizing themselves for not being able to hold it all, right? And then add to that, we've got everything. We've got the online groups, the forums, the specialized communities, the constant exposure to other people's protocols, and, talking ad nauseum about how to fit ourselves within them. And then, and suddenly everyone's in 10 different spaces, tracking 10 different things, comparing notes and thinking I don't know, maybe I should try that too. Or, I don't know, hanging out for some reason, right? It's because it's novelty, it's stimulation. You feel you belong somewhere. But it ends up becoming like a kid in a candy shop in some cases, right? Or even worse, like a creepy clown circus, you know what I mean? It's not nourishment, it's not coherence, and it's not healing. And I want to say this, maybe this is the simplest way to say it. Abundance without discernment does not create nourishment. It creates confusion. So this is not a healthy version of abundance at all. It's excess. It's chaotic excess. It's like a binge fest of information. Like, you know what I mean? And it demands more from people than their bodies can possibly give, and that they even can really understand most of the time. And so when I say that the paradigm that we're in is broken, I don't mean it gently. It didn't just like fracture our trust. It fractured our wholeness. And it worked exactly as it was designed, right? Endless growth, endless specialization, endless consumption, right? That's what the modern societal infrastructure is. It's built for itself to thrive, not you and me. Right. And now we live inside a culture obsessed with more, 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 bigger, better, faster, more. Right. Okay. So when people started turning away from conventional medicine and allopathy, they weren't just leaving that. They ended up carrying all this conditioning with them. And they brought the urgency with them. They brought the hyper-fixation with them. They brought the outsourcing of authority with them. They brought the belief that more equals better, right? Because why? It was conditioned our whole lives. So it's just like a branding rechange, really, if you will. And so to me, I feel like until we name this and until we see this and until we're honest about it, we're just going to keep exhausting ourselves while calling it wellness. Right? And the truth is that everything has a shadow, right? So if we're talking about a system, it's got a shadow. And anything that goes unexamined starts operating without our awareness. And right now, the shadow beneath modern wellness is enormous. It's not subtle anymore. It's not theoretical. And it's not contained to just a few, I don't know, fringe corners of the health world. What we're witnessing is a collective trauma response playing out through the body disguised as health. So, shadow is simply what hasn't been seen yet, right? The beliefs each one of us carry about our bodies, the narratives we all have absorbed without questioning them, the reflexes that we've each inherited around whatever symptoms show up in our body, or when we experience danger or control, right? Like we all have reflexes that we've learned throughout our lives, or even inherited is what I'm actually really getting at, because we have observed, our immediate families, our larger or smaller communities, our larger communities, and then culture, right? So within all of those, we've inherited reflexes because of them. And then we also kind of have this collective assumption that the body is unreliable and it must be managed, fixed, overridden, or always constantly optimized, right? So when we never examine these things, they run the system from the dark. And when something is running unconsciously, it it has power over us. It has power over us instead of with us. And this is one of the main reasons I personally think the intensity in the wellness space is so freaking extreme right now. It's not some random coincidence. It's this paradigm that I just named, expressing itself through our collective nervous system, right? People are trying to heal from inside the very states that are keeping them stuck. And it shows up in a few clear, repeatable patterns. A big one is hypervigilance, right? This is the fight or flight version of wellness. People are researching constantly, they're tracking constantly, they're monitoring every sensation, reaction, fluctuation. You know, they're not actually like letting the body lead, right? Like that's what we mean when we say listening to our bodies. They're actually like doing mass surveillance on them. You know what I mean? Like every sensation becomes a data point. Every discomfort we have ends up, oh gosh, is it a threat? Do I have some major pathological thing? Like, I know I'm being a little over the top, but seriously, you guys, if you had sat inside the thousands of conversations I've had to sit inside, you would this is very accurate. So, every reaction people have, and I've been there. That like everything I'm saying, I've felt and been there. Like every reaction I would have is like, "Oh my god, what's wrong? Like something's wrong with me." Right? Like every little thing, okay? And this is what this really is threat detection because someone's in that overactive fight or flight response, right? It's not embodiment at all. It's the nervous system. It's just like constantly scanning for danger and like calling it awareness. I've been there and it just like burns through energy and minerals and resilience faster than almost anything else. While people actually think they're being responsible. And then we have like the freeze and the collapse, right? That's the extreme opposite where like people will just be like, I can't take in any information. I have to go hide somewhere. Like they're so overwhelmed by any information, even if they need some right now. You know what I mean? They're also just terrified of doing the wrong thing. So they just don't do anything. Or they second guess every choice, right? And then nothing lands because they just stall. They like want to, there's like this desire to wait for certainty that's never coming, right? It's like, okay, let's jump from idea to idea and never commit to anything long enough for it to matter, right? Because that's that like essential like freeze collapse, I'm trying to protect myself kind of situation. And it's because they just got into a overwhelm and shutdown because they've like, they've read too much and they no longer trust themselves or anyone else. It's wild, right? So people are oscillating between doing everything at once or doing nothing at all. And neither state creates healing, right? Ultimately, incoherence is the pattern underneath it all. Incoherence, right? People are cherry picking interventions they don't have the context for. I'm not saying everyone's doing everything wrong, you guys. I'm being emphatic here because I'm like observing patterns across the board. So please, I'm not trying to say everyone's royally messing up here, but like collectively the energy of this is showing up like this. Does that make sense? So the other thing people will do is they'll like mix, I don't know, they'll like take a part of one protocol or another protocol, or they'll try this one thing and this other thing, and they mix things together that don't really belong or move the needle, right? Maybe they're like, I want to try this strategy, and it's not even appropriate for the actual state of their body at the time. Like it's like advanced and they haven't even, you know, laid the basics, or it's even maybe not even necessary at all, right? And there's just people doing a lot of things, but no sequencing, no containment, no relationship, and zero ecological lens whatsoever. And I'm going to be honest, that is not discipline. It's chaos dressed up as effort. And I think a lot of people are doing a lot of wrong things out of order. And I've done this myself in a poorly timed way because they're trying to heal inside a paradigm that doesn't honor biology, right? Because we have been trained in many ways, essentially, to distrust our bodies. Also, we've been conditioned to outsource our authority. We obsess over fixing ourselves, right? And we actually confuse intensity. We confuse that with commitment. And then we confuse information with actual wisdom. Okay. We could dig into all of these like for entire hour-long episode themselves. And then but the bottom line is we've hit this orthorexia kind of place, right? It didn't come out of nowhere. And what that is an obsession with like purity, optimization, perfect health. And essentially it becomes its own illness. I talked about it last year, like the Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail. You know what I mean? And so it is a natural outcome of a culture already afraid of the body. Our medical system totally fragmented our trust. The information age is chaos, you guys. There's no like wise elder to guide you through it. you know? And then of course the wellness industry sells complexity as like kind of like a virtue. It's like a virtue signal out there all the time. It's wild. And it's not even about purity anymore, if we're honest. It's kind of like about fear, right? Like we're afraid of symptoms and we fear any kind of reaction, and people are definitely afraid of slowing down. Every time I talk about it, people get very worked up about that, um afraid of being wrong, and we're just like afraid of our own freaking bodies. Right? And so when there's that fear running in the backdrop, it's running in our nervous systems, right? And this is where, things don't land. People say, "Oh, nothing's working." And the reality is the nervous system, it can't actually like make the progress while it believes it's under constant threat. Even when the threat is disguised as self-care. Right? It doesn't go into logic. It like the nervous system is feeling everything. It's sensing everything. Okay? And this is the part we're not talking about enough, you know? I mean, everybody wants healing. They want healing without contrast. They want to take the input and they just want the result without naming their part in why they need that in the first place, right? Like they're not naming the drain. They want, well, what supplement's going to fix this, or what protocol is going to do this, or blah 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 blah. But they're not acknowledging what's like actually burning through everything. Like we're all burning our minerals right back up when we stay in this kind of nervous system pattern, right? People want to like heal their gut without really understanding the ecosystem of why their gut is where it's at. Nervous system. Everybody wants, I want to do the nervous system healing, but what's actually keeping you braced? Like, why do we all of a sudden need so much nervous system language repair and classes and all the things? Right? Like, how did we get here? Why are we all here? Could we maybe like talk about why we're all like braced nonstop? And, we just have to have more honesty around this, guys, because biology does not work the way that we are operating. You don't get stability without ecological honesty. You don't get regulation if you aren't willing to name what has destabilized you. And it's been longer than you think, you know? And we don't just get to like heal because we added a ton of more inputs into our system, right? This system that's already overwhelmed. Like, how does that even make it sense? Make it make sense. You still have to, your body still has to do something with those inputs. Can it even use them, And so this is why, like, I'm hearing so many people, they're like, I feel like everything I'm doing isn't actually sticking. I feel stuck. I feel like I haven't been able to move the needle. I feel like I've tried everything, and on and on and on. There's so many ways people have been saying this. But here's the thing. The unconscious is still running the show, y'all. And until we all do our own due diligence to make our own unconscious conscious, you guys know the quote, it's going to keep ruling the body and we're just going to keep acting like it's fate, right? So today's episode is really to shine the light on this collective shadow around wellness, so that our entire system can start to reorganize, right? Because clarity is very regulating. And when we put language to something that's been shadowy, lurky, it starts to restore coherence. And I'm going to go so far as to say that when we have more awareness, and awareness isn't the only thing, but like we have to get there, it can restore some of our voltage because we stop leaking energy into the ethers. Like, where's it even going? Because we can't see, what's lurking there that our energy is going to. Does this make sense? This is physiology, you guys. I'm not just being philosophical here. And so this is where we have to be honest so that we can move the needle on our own healing, right? Um, because the bottom line is nobody's nervous system can heal under siege, right? And once you can see any shadow, but this is a big one, the next question becomes a lot more obvious, right? Um, Everyone says, well, why doesn't anything stick? And why do things help me briefly and then I fall apart? Or, I've done so much work and I'm still flaring, or I've tried everything and this just must be my baseline now. You know, why does the body reacting get interpreted as failure instead of information? The answers to these questions aren't mysterious. It's the nervous system cannot settle and stabilize or heal, if we want to call it that, while it's being asked to adapt to conditions that signal ongoing threat. So, a system under siege isn't pathological. We always want a freaking label for everything. It's adaptive. It's responding exactly as designed. And what's it doing? Well, guess what? It's prioritizing survival over repair. And so when the nervous system cannot stand down, the body's going to reallocate resources away from restoration towards protection, right? And that means your digestion becomes secondary. Your motility slows down, or it like becomes erratic. Same thing with your detox pathways. They actually become inconsistent. And of course, we know sleep is going to fragment and be wackadoodle. Blood sugar, of course, will destabilize, we'll have lingering inflammation. We're going to be burning up our minerals faster than they can be replenished. And these things happen because the body has to brace itself, right? And so you can't really rebuild an ecosystem, if you will. I like this word so much. So we're referring to our own ecosystem of the human body. If it's constantly being asked to stay on guard. And yet, this is exactly what modern wellness asks people to do. Heal faster, do more, track everything, optimize relentlessly, stay alert for every symptom, right? Like correct every deviation, never fall behind. even rest, even rest. I mean, I have to tell people this, but like now people are like, it's part of a checklist or a task instead of like just honored as, you know what I mean? It's just even stillness. Like we're trying to meditate as a performance. You know what I mean? Like, oh, but like regulation doesn't come from like an effortful manner. It comes from the conditions. And so a system that's constantly monitoring itself cannot simultaneously reorganize itself. And this is where so many people get confused. I still think a lot of people think nervous system healing is about calming down or breathing better. Like I got to do my breathing work. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying, like, this is or, like, doing the right practices. That's the nervous system healing. I'm doing the things. But the deeper truth is simpler, and it's, quite frankly, harder to face. Really, the nervous system settles when the environment you're in stops demanding vigilance. And let's be real, the environment that environment includes like how much information you're consuming, how many interventions you're juggling, how many contradictory inputs you're applying, how much pressure you're placing on outcomes, and how unsafe it feels to slow down or do less. And if the body doesn't trust the environment, it will continue to adapt defensively. No supplement overrides that. No protocol compensates for that. And no amount of like insight can bypass that. And this is why so many people feel like they're constantly like almost there. They improve like just enough to keep going, and then something destabilizes them again. Because the conditions were never actually changed. And until they do, what the body's just going to prioritize protection over repair. And so clearly this is not just like a mindset issue, a motivation, willpower issue. It's just an ecological reality. You can't restore rhythm in a system that's being asked to brace. And I think that this is a big piece that gets missed when healing is framed as something you do to the body instead of something you create the conditions for. Because healing doesn't happen just because you try harder, right? It happens when your system finally receives the signal that it no longer has to defend itself to survive. And that, my friends, is the turning point. And so I want to kind of like mature this conversation a bit and cast a more ecosystem lens so we can see what actually works. Because while the foundations of healing are simple, the process isn't instant and it's not like linear. And when I say that, I mean like a math equation of like, I do X thing and I get Y result. You know what I mean? Like, the body's not a machine. It's not a checklist. It's not something you like once and done, like it's an ecosystem, and ecosystems are always responding to conditions past and present. They don't heal through intensity. They heal through stability over time. But they also continue to adapt over time to whatever conditions are given, right? So an ecosystem's not like asking, well, what's wrong? It's like sensing, well, all right, what are the conditions I have right now? And how do I work within them? Okay, do I have enough fuel consistently? Like, is there hydration that actually is reaching the tissues? Is the mineral support even appropriate at this stage? Is there some kind of rhyme or reason and rhythm? Is there spaciousness? Is there consistency? Is there time and safety? So even when foundations are present, repair doesn't just happen overnight, especially in bodies that have been living under this extreme strain or restriction or depletion or like constant interventions for years. When I talk about foundations, people hear them and they think, well, I already did that. I already have that in place. Why isn't it working anymore? You know, um, but we're not static, okay? Conditions change, stressors shift, what's the word I want here? Demands. I was going to say damages. Demands increase. We have hidden drains that emerge, from previous compensations, right? Like, something that was supportive last season that seemed to like really move the needle may not be sufficient in a more high demand season of life, right? Or appropriate even for like today versus like a year ago. And this is where people get so freaking tripped up, right? We go straight to pathologizing instead of like, I wonder, like, be curious. Like, I wonder why it's different now than it was before, right? Um, People escalate really fast, instead of actually just like reassessing the conditions. Like, okay, all right, here's where I'm at, right? Let's actually take a look and, you know, establish where I'm at. You know what I mean? Um, and sometimes that people can panic a little bit for a little hot minute instead of learning a skill of like just observing yourself. So a lot of times a symptom will change and it'll be like, oh, I have this flare up now. And it's like, well, or a pattern. I just combined two words. Oh my word. Bowel pattern shifts. Like I'm hearing that one a lot, like a lot lately. And this has happened to me over the years. Like I've noticed as my body is continuing to unravel, like it's unwinding at its own pace and stuff like pops up here and there. And it's like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder what's going on there? Um, and just because these things show up doesn't mean we did something wrong or something's currently like totally off and we have to like, you know, that all the work that we did in the past meant nothing. You know what I mean? Like, um, we can ask ourselves questions. Like we can actually like ask, well, what has changed in the environment? Like, was there a different pressure that might have increased? Am I doing something that's became insufficient? Is there a condition that's no longer being met? Like, we can ask these questions, right? Instead of assuming something has gone wrong or like calling it a backslide. I've heard that one so much. Or like run a whole new slew of tests just to check in and see what's going on, right? And start stacking all these new interventions, right? Um, a change in output doesn't mean failure. It just means the conditions shifted. That's it, right? We don't like tear up an entire garden because one plant struggled. We look at the light, we look at the water, we look at the soil, the spacing, the timing. Are there any stressors happening around it, Like we can become detectives without becoming judges. So to me, this is the core difference between like intervention based healing and ecological healing. Intervention based is like, well, what do I add? What do I correct? What do I eliminate? But ecology is like, okay, well, what's the system responding to now? What can it actually handle right now? What actually needs to be stabilized before anything else changes? Because honestly, timing and sequencing and capacity all matter more than like, I need a new intervention. I need a new thing to do. Right? We don't layer complexity onto instability and stimulate a system that's already overstimulated or like push ourselves to detoxify in a body that actually can't even rest. Like you can't even rest, but you're going to push the detox. Your digestion's slow. Your elimination is slow, but you're going to push, I'm going to detox my body, through whatever means, right? Um we can't expect repair to hold if the conditions that support it aren't properly maintained. So, healing from an ecosystem lens looks deceptively simple, but, you know, people don't trust it because it's not the conditioning that we've got. Like, we're not being marketed to anymore. We're not like, it's not flashy. It doesn't promise speed. It's not optimized, right? Like, the ecosystem lens is more going to prioritize regular nourishment over perfect nutrition, like getting in every check mark of macro and nutrient, whatever. Right. So the other thing is appropriate support for where you are right now over maximal support. So like 82 million health influencers shouting we need X amount grams of protein a day, but like you can't do that in your body right now. There's no way you could even assimilate it. Like it doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? Or even just like hydrating yourself, overstimulating yourself. Like everyone's like only interested in hydration because they're overstimulated and they really feel it. It's crazy. You know what I mean? Consistency over novelty, right? Rhythm over intensity, and containment, like over like constantly wanting to expand, 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 you know? And so this is more accepting of what modern wellness refuses to accept is that repair unfolds in cycles. And it's not like I do these things and I get this result and bam, it's fixed forever. You know, um, our body's always going to be reorganizing. So when you can get to this place where you can work within this, something really fundamental changes. Like your body just stops bracing all of a sudden, you know, and the nervous system can actually reallocate resources. And you have deeper sleep, your tolerance to stress increases. You can actually look at your symptoms as information and not an emergency. And that's because the system is going to be reorganizing because the conditions finally allow it to do what it's been trying to do all along, right? Like, because the body does heal itself when the conditions for it are right, you know? Um, so, you know, this is the difference between micromanaging our biology and then actually working with it and supporting it, right? One way we've tried to do it for so long is override it. We've just literally tried to override our physiology. Whereas the other is just going to allow for that reorganization when we can align the conditions, right? And that's what the body will do. It's always going to do that when the conditions make it possible. So, what I'm calling for is it's old wisdom. It's not a new trend. It's a return to simplicity. You know, I'm not talking about shortcuts and I'm not talking about minimalism either as like some kind of aesthetic. And I'm not even talking about pretending that the body is simple. I'm just talking about returning to the conditions that biology actually responds to because every living system, you know, soil, forest, gut, nervous system, it organizes itself based on the conditions it's given. I sound like a broken record at this point. But, you know, we've tried to do it all the wrong ways through idealistic whatever, theoretical you know, theory and just it's crazy, right? Um, and for most of human history, health was never like something we chased like this, the way that we are today, to the degree that we are today. And it certainly wasn't like totally outsourced, right? It was just, would have been more a part of our daily life than our current cultural paradigm is allowing it, right? We would have been more aligned with circadian biology, right? Light and dark, movement and rest, food that came from the land, you know, or the water, the way the water was supposed to be, right? Like we would have had the minerals in both of those, you know, but we would have also honored communal ways of living. Um, so anyways, our body wasn't asked to constantly perform like we were part of a circus. You know? So, we don't we do need some innovation, I think, because, you know, I'm not dissing innovation, but, like, holy moly, it's out of this world right now, like, it's crazy, and so we just need to stop bypassing some of the most basics and assuming that they mean instantaneous results, right? So when we've all been living under this kind of strain for years, decades, our whole lives. We can't expect this on-demand restoration, okay? Um, you can have the right inputs and still see positive fluctuations, and you can lay the foundations and still see, adaptation surface while you've got the right things in place. You can do many things and still need to revisit what you thought was already in place. I promise you. So many people are like, "Oh, I know this intellectually, but actually if I'm honest, I'm not embodying it right now." Like, how many people are like, "I know the things I'm supposed to do, but actually I'm not doing them right now." It doesn't mean you're backsliding either. It just means, we're always responding to changing conditions. So, all right, I feel like I've laid this down really thick. You know, I hope that you guys are picking up what I'm putting down. There is a difference between chasing fixes and cultivating stability. And when I say simplicity, I'm not saying do less forever. I'm saying like slow way down to figure out what is appropriate, reorganize and pivot. You know what I mean? Like that's old wisdom. It's not a trend. And it's the only thing that consistently works. And so this is exactly why I practice the way that I do. I don't work from like, a protocol driven model. The support that I offer isn't about following a rigid plan. It's about helping you organize and pace what your body needs so it can make the shifts it's ready for without being overridden or pushed. And most people I work with have already spent years doing that, like pushing through symptoms, layering interventions, trying to force change instead of understanding what their system is responding to. And, that can produce some short term shifts, but it rarely creates long term stability. And so we slow things way down by design, and slower doesn't mean ineffective. People often feel changes early in their digestion and their energy, their sleep regulation, but those changes are supported through pacing, not pressure. All right. So I do work from this ecosystem lens that I'm speaking of, and I use two functional tools. I use hair tissue mineral analysis and the microbiome effects, which kind of maps out your biome. And we're not trying to diagnose or label you. We're just trying to understand your current, uh, you know, terrain, how your body has adapted. And the hair test shows me how the mineral system and stress physiology have adapted over time. It gives insight into long-term compensation patterns, nervous system priorities, metabolic pressure, and the microbiome mapping shows me how the gut ecosystem is organized, what's supporting it, what's straining it, how the infrastructure is functioning as a whole. So both are giving a lay of the land, if you will, not like a verdict, but a starting point. And from there, we can move much more intentionally and deliberately and sequence the right support. Also, observe how the system responds as we go, adjust based on the reality of what's coming up, not fear, right? And we're not treating any reactions as failures, right? And this is why I like to have weekly check-ins with my clients to, you know, not to micromanage, because like this is where people get scared. They like misinterpret their own signals and oftentimes abandon what's going to eventually help them, and they need to understand it, how to like pace this all, right? Cuz people will sabotage cuz they genuinely don't really understand what's going on. And that's why I think that healing absolutely cannot happen through information alone or in isolation. It happens much better through right relationship and containment and learning how to trust the body again. And that really does often require skilled guidance to interpret what's unfolding. So if this episode landed for you and this way of working resonates with you, and if you're tired of forcing change and ready to build real stability, You can learn more about my Minerals and Microbes program through the link in the show notes. This isn't like we're going to do some things, but it's not like stacking way too much on top of an already stressed out life, right? It's the goal of creating better conditions that finally allow your body to do what it's been trying to do all along. All right, guys. Well, that is it for this episode. And I'm so excited to be back in the podcasting swing for you. I'll be back really soon with another episode for you. Stay wild and stay well, guys.